Perfect. All right. Hi, and welcome to the Aligned Success Show, where we have real conversations about what success looks like when, it's built from a place of alignment, not just hustle. So I'm your host, Shalay, and around here, we truly believe that success isn't just about chasing goals, chasing success, but that it's about creating a life, a career, a business that is, truly in alignment with you where you can thrive. And so each episode, I sit down with inspiring women who are living proof that when you align who you are with what you do, everything changes, success follows, and just things are just more at ease. So today I'm so honored to introduce and welcome a very special guest, Myel Thelen. For over 20 years, Myel has worked you know, making a difference in her community. She's got quite an impressive resume that I know she'll share with us in just a little bit. And she's actually now the executive director of California Women Lead, promoting equity, community well being, where she helps and empower amazing women to step into leadership and to just use their voices to make an impact like she did and still doing, which is one of the main reasons why she's with us today. And because she's embodying what alignment looks like when you're doing something that you're passionate about. And so without further ado, I want to go ahead and just bring Myel. And so, Myel, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Welcome.
Thank you. Of course. Thank you for such a lovely introduction. I'm really honored to be here, particularly knowing the mission of your show and the alignment of success. And as you said, living a full life that resonates with me. So I'm truly honored to be here today. So thank you for the invite.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you as well. So, yeah, if you wouldn't mind, just share your journey with us and like what really has led you to the work that you're doing today.
Um, I like to share with folks my journey has not been linear, and it hasn't necessarily. The step I'm at now as the executive director of California Women Lead wasn't even something I anticipated 2 years ago or 5 years ago. And for me, my journey has really been about opening, opportunity, and connection. And so I started off right out of college doing alcohol and drug prevention programs in the Bay Area with young people. So my work had started off being definitely community based around youth development, alcohol and drug prevention programs, and working with teens. And just loved the work, just love being in community and love. For me, I'm really driven by connection and making an impact. So when I came back to Sacramento, my hometown, I came back as a mom of two young kids and came back to be closer to family, like many of us do, needing that extra support. And I found at that time just new opportunities. So I worked at the county for a bit. I was a program planner, which is a perfect fit for me title wise because I love planning. And I worked in community around mental health services, and then also worked at First Five Sacramento as part of the county. So really working around families with children under five, which was perfect because I also fit that demographic at the time. And one thing I love to share is at that time when I was at the county, I experienced a layoff. And it was in the middle of the recession, probably about 2008, 2009. And it took me some time to find another position that felt like a real fit with my skill set, as well as something that I felt passionate about. And so, what that did is that I was home for my youngest son's first 6 months of kindergarten and just really dove into it and became like ultra PTA volunteer. I took all that work energy and just dumped it into the school. But what that did is because it took some time, I landed at a regional foundation in our area. So I was at Sierra Health Foundation. And for me, it was amazing because for the first time, I was actually distributing money into communities as a program officer at a foundation and still doing mental health work and at an organization that really aligned with my values around equity And so, again, it wasn't a linear path to Sierra Health Foundation in any way. Um, since then, I've worked at associations on statewide level and dove into working at the California School Boards Association and was able to use multiple skill sets there because I promoted into different positions from being into training, which I've had a lot of training experience, to being the director of conferences. And then ended up back at Sierra Health again, which was amazing. And when I came back, really being able to again utilize all the skill set that I had built between the 4 years of my time there originally and time there back. And it's from that position that I moved into the California Women Lead Executive Director, which has been um, phenomenal. And for me, this was an opportunity to really lean in and move into a women's space. And that was something I loved the work I was doing. I love being able to do grants and distribute money across the state. But I was also seeking a place where I could support other women. And so when this position came open, I had a friend who really highly recommended me to apply. And at the time, I was hesitant because I'm like, I don't see myself as an executive director. That's not the position I want to be going for long term.
Mhm.
But the more I thought about it, I'm like, this is the right fit. And so when I was interviewing, I'm like, I want this position. And with this position, it brings together my professional experience that I've had in community building and direct board of directors relationships, mentoring those relationships, training, conferencing, public speaking, planning. One of my strong skill sets is program planning and management, and just a little bit of everything. And I get to be in these women's spaces that are incredibly supportive because as California Women Lead, our intent, we were founded in 1974 with the intent to have more women in elected office and to get to parity. And in 2025 in California, we're close to parity in our state offices. And so the work that we do is again training women to be able to maneuver into these spaces, having leadership development training, but also talking about appointments to boards and commissions, recognizing that's often the first step to feeling confident to running for office. What I didn't mention is that I had ran for office and I ran in 2018 as a school board candidate for my school district in California, which at the time was the 11th largest school district. I did not win. And I realized I was okay. And so part of my journey is that like branching out and pushing myself outside of my professional world by running for office, doing training on how to run for office for myself so I can learn. And now I'm bringing that in. So this is the first time in a position where I'm really bringing in my strong like extracurricular volunteer activities, to my professional life, along with the professional skills that I've developed over the last 20, gosh, even 30 years. So,
Yeah.
so what inspires me is being in community, connection. What inspires me is the opportunity to help individuals be their best selves, as well as how that impacts the community in a positive way.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, see, I wasn't kidding when I mentioned earlier that you've got quite an
Oh.
extensive, impressive resumes and that I had to have you explain that. So thank you for doing that, Maya.
Thank you for listening.
That's amazing. Now what I wanted to ask you, because when you were explaining something where, you had that time with your son
Yes.
and an opportunity came with now your position and before you actually decided that you wanted it, but then there was that first thought that you didn't want it. What was going through your mind as to why you think that couldn't be,
Yeah,
where you wanted to be?
sure. Um, that's a really good question, and no one has asked me that before. And with that, it was a little nerve-wracking to think about being the executive director and being that decision maker. And granted, we're a small organization. I'm the only full-time staff, but having the success of our work rest on my shoulders. And we're an organization that's been around for over 50 years. So even as I push myself and expand and build my confidence, there's always that piece like, ooh, and I I work really well in teams. I work well leading teams. I love collaboration. And so also that thought of this is me and how am I going to do this? And as I went through the interview process, I'm like, this is me and I want to do this and I am the right fit. And so for me, it's every day just moving through like, I got this and how to, chunk it out, take it day by day. And one of the things that's been pretty amazing and exciting is there have been times where we have the bandwidth where for a special project, for instance, we did a day-long conference in LA in November. And as a one-person staff, I'm responsible for the promotion, the registration, all of those. And I'm like, I don't have the bandwidth for all of that. So as the ED, I was able to bring on two of my past staff members from Sierra Health Foundation, my previous position, and put them on contract. And what I realized is that as the ED, as I work towards expanding our bandwidth as an organization and hopefully building us out so that we have the opportunity to have more staff than just myself, that I'm building out the team and I'm carrying forth the vision of the board of directors and I'm cultivating what I want our organizational culture to be when it comes to volunteering or working. And so, for instance, we just did an event a week ago Monday, and I'm so blessed. My retired friends, like I make them volunteer with me, and one of our volunteers has volunteered with me for all three big events that we've held since I came into the position in August. So again, I just use that as an example of realizing like, okay, it is a little scary, it's a little daunting, and I have the tools that I need to make it happen. And part of my tools is my network. And within that, I get to pull people in as they have the capacity and we have the capacity. And with that, I know the direction that the board and I are set in, and I get to help drive that direction on a day-to-day basis and set our culture, which I find very exciting because it's an opportunity to take those leadership trainings and classes and values that I have as a leader and implement it on a day-to-day basis.
Wow, that's amazing because it's what it what I got from that was that you actually took inventory. You had the self-awareness to take inventory of your skills and the things that you knew you were good at that gave you that courage to realize that, wait, I can actually do this. I'm
Yes.
actually the person to do this. And not
Right.
a lot of people can do that. And so, which is why it's amazing that you mentioned that because when, a woman is stepping into a leadership role or
Mhm.
transitioning into a career, it's so important to have them just be so self-aware to take inventory of what it is that they are really good at and all the
Right.
skills and to just kind of stack those things up because
Mhm.
we as women it's like sometimes it's we just stay so humble for the most
Yeah.
part and we forget that that's actually a very powerful skill and that's something that you could share with the world, so thank you for sharing that.
Well, thank you. And just like to add on to what you were saying, for me, and bringing on the two team members that I brought on for some time, I brought them in capacities that I know were their strengths, but not mine. And so one of the things that made it really easy to bring them on is that we've worked together for so long that we had a flow, we know each other's work styles, and I trust them, and I know their work as well. Um, and gosh, you said something that just sparked a thought, and I wish I had written down a keyword because now I can't think of what it was, but something you said was absolutely brilliant.
Well, I'm glad you kind of mentioned that too, because that sparked like an amazing, about alignment, where when you brought those your amazing volunteers, you knew what their strengths were. And that's why
Right.
you brought them on because you knew that that's something that you weren't good at, but they were good at. And so passing on, delegating that task onto them will just be like it's an accomplishment as a whole instead of you trying to do everything on your own.
Right.
Yeah.
Completely, completely. And then it allowed me to feel more confident because I'm like, I may not have the bandwidth, but we created the bandwidth to get it done. And so I can focus on the areas I need to focus on, knowing that they're taking care of theirs. And then I can push out and be more focused instead of, trying to do 10 different things for a conference. I can focus on the fundraising or the outreach, and they are doing reg and follow up. So it was a really good team experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Now, Myel, um, was there a pivotal moment that shifted your success in a new direction that led you to where you are now?
Completely. I would say running for office in 2018. Um, I knew I had wanted to run for office probably be about 2 to 3 years before I did so. And there was two things that I was hesitant about. One was as many being like striving for success and juggling many things, I was scared to run and lose. Like
Mm,
I felt like losing could be humiliating. I was also scared to run, not knowing like, could I fundraise enough? And if I couldn't fundraise enough, am I filling the campaign through my own family funds? And like, ow, like, how does that feel? Like, what, didn't budget for that. So I ran for office in 2018. The fundraising, I was really proud. I far exceeded my own expectations of myself. And I think, again, it was because of connection, of building connection with those that were willing to give, knowing that they were supporting my vision for our school district. And I lost. And at the time, I worked at the California School Boards Association. And the conference that we do was always the week after Thanksgiving. And I was in charge of the orientation for all the newly elected school board members. So what I always joked about at the office is like, no matter what, I'll be in that room, either as staff or as a new. I was in the room and I wasn't there as a newly elected. I had lost, and my race was called right before the conference started. So not only did I have to walk through that fear of losing publicly, I had to be in a space with those that won. And I had to be in a space with people who are school board members who knew that I ran because the association's board of directors were wonderful, and they'd always pull me aside. Myel, I want you to meet the people in my district. Myel just ran. She ran a grant campaign, but she lost. And, like I had to really deal with it. And I found out that I was okay and that I was strong enough to run through this and do it and not get the outcome that I wanted. And at the same time, it expanded my horizons. It showed other women in my community that they could also run as and be women of color and run. And so the makeup of our candidates has changed dramatically over the past few years. And for me, what it did is I continued to be in that space, even though I didn't win. So I continued to be active at the school board. I continued to be active in different political areas as the VP of the Women Dems of Sacramento, the VP of Black Women Organized for Political Action in Sacramento. And I truly believe if I had not allowed myself that door to walk through at that time, I would not be in the position that I'm in now. I would not have been familiar with how to run campaigns, structure, Robert's Rules of Order for meetings. Like, I would not be familiar with the world that I'm currently in due to just my professional world up until 2018. And for me, that really shifted my success. And it's helped me to redefine success, that success doesn't have to be a particular outcome. But I felt successful that I went in and I ran and I exceeded my own fundraising goals. I think I fundraised about 32 to 34,000, where I thought I had never done it before. So I was like, I'll be lucky if I get 8,000. So it really shifted my perspective on success, and it's made me more confident to be uncomfortable. I'm better at being comfortable with discomfort and knowing that I'm not always going to come out on top, and that's okay. And I feel like the resiliency that I got to practice in that experience,
mhm.
I carry with me And I know that I'm strong, that I'm smart, and that I'm resilient. And I trust myself in a way that I did not trust myself before. And that my confidence is true confidence from going through things that I just wasn't anticipating or expecting. So that was a tremendous pivot that I continue to feel to this day.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. What's powerful about what you just shared with us was like knowing when you mentioned that you lost and that you still had to be in the same environment with people that was supporting you, but not only that, the people that actually that won over
Mhm,
you, but you kept your head up high. Now,
mhm.
what was going through your mind? What were you saying to yourself, aside from that this is okay? But
Yeah,
that's what I want to know is
sure.
I'd love for you to share with us because you know how some people, because it's a public thing what you went through, and,
Public.
and people would just retreat where it would take them time
Yeah.
to just kind of recover from that setback. So,
Yeah.
yeah, if you could just share with us, what were you thinking? So that way it will really help people who are experiencing failure right now and just can't seem to find that reason to get back up.
Yeah. I'm just taking a moment because I feel like I have two thoughts on that. And one was I just had to put one foot forward. And sometimes it was just in the moment, and sometimes it was in the day. And for instance, I didn't take the next day off after the election. So the election was on a Tuesday. We did a watch party with friends, and my family was so supportive. And at that time, there were four candidates for two seats. When the results first came out, I was in the second position. So it looked promising, but I didn't have a big buffer. And then the results came out again like at 1 a.m. and I had chosen not to do it. My husband at the time chose to look, and I could hear him, and he was quiet, and I knew. And I
Mm.
just felt physically, I could feel everything just sink like an elevator into my belly and just like weight on my shoulders, right? And I had to go to work with people that are watching the race, staff that were supportive and encouraging. I remember nothing of that day, but I do remember just putting my foot forward. And I do remember having calls from folks that supported me so much, calling and being like, we got you. The results aren't in yet. There's still time. You did fantastic. And so, with that, um, I'll say the other piece to that was the tremendous support I got. And that support has helped me because I've had some other unexpected challenges over the last few years that have been like oddball. And I'm sure many of us have experienced them ourselves, but I felt held and seen.
Mhm.
And so, and I realized that those that supported me were as invested as almost I was, and they were grieving. And so, like, it was a real grief. And so, like, grieving with them. And one of the things we did is afterwards, like maybe a few weeks later, I had a kitchen cabinet. So I had them come over before the end of the year and like they processed, they were upset, they were sad, were, and so we
And
processed.
you
So
had
I
to
was
probably be the one to console them.
totally, totally. Because it was like, wow, this is, yeah. So I would say one was I just had to chunk it out, just put one foot forward. You don't have to tackle everything at one time. Stayed connected and relied on those who were offering support. And then the other piece was it was important to me personally on how I handled the loss, as much as it would have been important to me personally as how I would handle a win. And I felt like the loss was also a reflection, how I reacted to it is a reflection of my character. And so it wasn't the outcome that I wanted, but I wasn't going to allow that to make me bitter or, do any of that. And if I had those thoughts, that was me for me to process alone or in a safe space, but not publicly. And so for me, how I handled the loss was important. Because that again, when you're running, you are your own brand, right? Like we talk about brand all the time. When you're running, you're it. And who I am as a person, whether it's personally in my everyday interactions with those that I love and care about, or if it's in a professional world or the worlds in between, that is important to me is how I show up. And what I found is I think, like professionally, I think that helped in my work setting because they were like, wow, Myel just lost and she's here. And she's here the next day. She's running a training. And for some reason, the lunch counts were off at that orientation. So I didn't even get to eat, like to add insult to injury. Like I was like, I'm in here training people that won, I lost, and now I don't get lunch. Like even stuff like that. But it's like, just roll with it. Just roll with it. So again, I think those were the pieces of just find your tool chest that helps you move through whatever it is that you need. Is it that daily walk? Is it whatever makes you still feel like you, even when you're grieving the loss of a success?
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so powerful. Thank you for sharing that because it's so important to just take one small step forward.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be anything grand. But what you did was that in your mind, you said, okay, I'm gonna go to work. I'm just gonna take this day by day. And
Hmm.
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And something like what you and I haven't necessarily talked about, and I'll share for a moment, and it may not necessarily be pertinent to this conversation, but in 2021, I experienced a surprise. To me, it was a surprise divorce after 25 years of marriage. And in that moment, I think that loss really helped because it's like, you know what? You've gone through something that you didn't want to go through, and you came out on the other side and you were okay. And so I was able to move through that. And then just to make things super wacky, a few months into like as we were prepping our divorce and in separation, I became the guardian of my nephew who was a newborn. And so again, I was like, whoa, well, okay, let's take this day by day. And so I cared for him for his first 7 weeks of life, picked him up from the hospital and did it single, worked part of the time. I had just gone back to Sierra Health Foundation. And the lessons that I shared with you just now were the lessons that I took with me that also influenced me professionally during that time, right? Like I was still able to show up for work during all these changes. I took it day by day, relied on my community who helped in any way, whether it was a food train while I'm caring for a newborn or my realtor coming over to stay with the newborn so I could take my 15-year-old out. That was the one who used to be in kindergarten back in the day. And for he and I just to have froyo. And then I could still show up and be present with my colleagues professionally too. So just share that. Like it was a pivotal moment that I rely on often. And
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I'm so glad you mentioned that because that's amazing because when people experience, what they will categorize as their biggest, greatest failure, um, but sometimes like what you just segued into is that failure or, that loss that you had with that election was somewhat setting you up to mentally, physically, emotionally prepare for another setback in your life.
Yeah. And to be able to see the setbacks as like, am I going to go through that door and learn something that I take with me, or am I going to go through this door and be bitter and let this create help allow me to be stagnant? And so I feel like with like there's setbacks that again aren't linear and have just they've shifted my path forward into this really exciting time of life for me with new opportunities and new connections and just a commitment to being in spaces that support equity and support women in their growth journey. And knowing that when we work together as women, we're all succeeding and we're changing the way that business works professionally with by creating these female networks where we're opening doors for each other.
That's amazing. That's beautiful, Niall.
Yeah,
Wow.
thank you.
And so to just kind of go into a little bit of a direction here. Now, I wanted to ask you, what do you think the biggest myth about success that you've been able to personally debunk?
I think for me personally, the biggest myth has been like taking apart that success is about external achievement, the corner office, the brand new car, personal assistant or executive assistant. For me, that I think that's how I was raised in my generation to think about success, that it's very external. And
Mm,
it's very much something that you can count. And for me, and thinking about success, what I'm discovering is that I get to define my success. And so for me, my definition is living a rich life, doing work that I feel committed to, and working in spaces that are supportive, whether or not like that's me, helping to create that space. And so for that's what success is to me. I'm an executive director of a small organization where I'm the only full-time staff, and I feel successful there because of the work that we're doing and who I'm with, and that success is part of the other aspects of my life. I have a life that's rich in friendships um, that bring me great joy and connection. Rich in my family, and right now we have four generations with my mom, and then I have a new grandson that's a newborn, and part of my success is that we do Sunday dinners at my house, and that I'm still working and go to work on Monday. So for me, it's really dismantling some of the patriarchy expectations of success and recreating that. And success is having a strong female network to me. So it's my definitions of what helps me feel like I'm contributing and making a mark and being true to myself.
yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that, Maya. Yeah, because it's like one of the things that I'm also trying to push out there is when it comes to being aligned with what you're doing, you know, there's so many preconceived notion about success that
Yeah,
we've all been so wired to think because of these societal expectations. And so, yeah, one of the things that I'm trying to do when I work with clients or when I'm speaking about it is that you have to redefine success based on who you are, not the external societal expectations. Because if you do that, you're just going to be so disappointed just chasing that success when you have to
really.
said it's internal. You have to look within and then
Yeah.
redefine your own success. So that's
Yes. I realized I remembered I had said earlier that you said something that sparked a thought and I couldn't find it, but I remember what it was. You had said, you made a comment about being humble, right? And maybe, yeah, I'm looking at your questions. I think one of your questions is if you could give one piece of advice to someone, what would it be? And is it okay if I jump there for a second, or
I
would you like
love
to?
it. No. Yes.
Okay. I'm going to tie it back to your comment about being humble and that question of what's a piece of advice you would give to someone. And for me, it took me a long time to learn this. And, midway through my career, within my last few years in my 40s, was I can be humble and shine at the same time. And so, a piece of advice I would give to women is we are we are trained, we learn that part of service and giving is to be humble. And sometimes in doing so, it means shrinking ourselves professionally, not appearing too assertive or too aggressive, um, making sure we acknowledge our team and a group success. And I would say to folks, like, we can still be humble as women and still allow our lights to shine. And humbleness is not necessarily about dimming our own light, because when we shine, we are sharing with the women around us and the women that are coming up behind us that they can also contribute and be bright lights and not have to dim themselves to make others feel stronger. So that would be the piece of advice I would give. It really, growing up Catholic, growing up the oldest daughter, like, my job is to be humble and to lift everybody else up. And now I'm like, oh, I can lift you up without pulling myself down.
Yeah.
So that would be the piece of advice I would share.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Now, how can you do that? Like, so if someone is struggling with trying to balance how to, stay humble, but then you also have to lift somebody up, how do you find that balance?
I think for me, it's been trying the little, like trying different steps. So, for instance, working in an organization within a team, um, I would say, if and as a team manager or someone, when you're getting that feedback from your colleagues in writing or from a client or from a contractor that's like, thank you, you've made this experience helpful, or say you share that with your manager. I want you to, this is some feedback I received. I'm very honored and I like to share it with you. And you keep that feedback for yourself as well. Like you save that. Um, I would say in being humble and also working with others is to look at the qualifying words that we use as well. I do this a lot and I always have to work on it. Well, I think, or would you consider, instead of like just being direct, here's an idea.
Yeah.
And so when using those qualifiers of, I don't want to interrupt, and if
Right.
you want to say something, go ahead and say it. And so I would say that's a big piece of walking back that humbleness, because unfortunately, like say the qualifiers or to not share your successes with others is diminishing your contribution and what you can give. And we're all hired for, hopefully, we're all hired for our skills, our expertise, our opinions. And so part of our work is to really share that and to do it in a way that doesn't diminish us. Because again, at least in my stage of life and where I was at Sierra Health Foundation as a senior program officer, there are women in positions that weren't as high as mine, but were looking towards me. And so I felt committed to practicing lifting them up, but also making sure that I'm lifting myself up too, so that they see me as a role model and that they don't have to, as Gen Z or millennials, do some of the things that we've done as Gen X, as being accommodating and, just accommodating and not rocking the boat. And sometimes the boat needs to be rocked.
Yes,
Um,
I agree.
yeah, we don't get to equity and change without rocking the boat. So, yeah. Did that help? Did I answer that?
No, you really did. You really did.
Okay.
And so my next question to just kind of piggyback off of that in a little bit is like, how would you help someone who, let's just say that they are in a position, a role, a
Mhm.
job that is just not aligned with, with leveraging their strengths or their
Mhm.
interests or their personality. So how would you help someone, number one, of course, talk to them and help them be aware that, like they're kind of going against the grain, which is why they're struggling. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think for me, in having those conversations is sometimes just starting with the questions. How does this feel? Um, what's working for you? What's not working for you? And working with someone to allow them to lead the conversation and to lead their own personal discovery. And from there, I think there are times where we may be mismatched for a position, whether it's the values aren't aligned or the skill set is off. And so one is, hey, acknowledging that, and is it is there the opportunity to move to a different position? Is there the opportunity to leave? But if not, what do you do to survive? Like, what is your short-term plan? And so, um, I've had this conversation before with a staff member who it wasn't it like the chapter had closed. She was ready for the next chapter and needed a position to move to. So the conversation was like, well, what is working for you? What are the things that you like about your job? Okay, how do we lean into that a bit more? Um, and as you're going through this period of like just waiting and trying to figure it out, what do you need personally to feel like you can manage this? Do you like need to go on walk in the middle of the day?
Right.
Because you're in a waiting pattern right now. Let's just own it. Let's just say it. Do you like if we're supposed to be in the office 3 days a week and you hit the wall, like, do you need to be in the office 2 days that week instead of the third? Like, really acknowledging sometimes that, yeah, we are in a tough situation. We're not able to bounce out of it immediately for whatever reason, financially, money, a new job. So, what do you do to make it manageable in that moment? How do you survive? Is it finding that coworker that you can just go vent to and do that? Is it making sure you take your vacation time at least once a month? So yeah, I would say in those situations when there's not alignment, again, lead with the questions so that they can help with that self-discovery. Um, and part of the questioning is like, is there a plan? Do you want to have a plan? You're job hunting, or you'll be out in 6 months, or maybe again, you want to move to a different department. And then once you have a plan, some of the questioning is, what do you need? What do you need immediately, short term, to make this work?
Right.
Yeah.
I love,
Yeah.
yeah, because it just seems like that there's so many people that are, were hired uh, for the job that they applied for because their skill set does match. But then all of
Right.
a sudden it's, finding out that the day-to-day task, for whatever reason, there's misalignment. And that's why
Right.
there's people that are struggling, even though they are qualified to do the job, but they're struggling because their personality doesn't match the day-to-day. And so that's what I'm kind of dealing with some of the people that I'm working with, where it's like, you know, they're just trying to figure out what to do next because they're either afraid to admit that because they got hired to do that job, but then it's such a vulnerable way to say, oh, like
Yeah.
how can I continue with this job even though I can do the job, but not quite, how can I restructure it in a way to work for everybody?
Right.
So,
And I think that's one of the important things about taking that time to figure out what is it that I really like about the day to day and what is it that I don't like. Because if the decision is this isn't a good fit, you've just informed yourself with data on what would be a good fit. What is it that you're looking for so that if you have to move to a different position, hopefully you're getting closer to alignment.
mhm.
Um, so, yeah, I would encourage those pieces. And sometimes I think too, with alignment, it could be the work task, it can be misalignment in the skill set, but it could also be misalignment in the culture and the communication. And so, again, like, are these things I can live with? If it's not something I can live with, then what choices do I have? Because unfortunately or fortunately, we always have choices, but we may not like the choices that we have. So, but we always have a choice, whether it's to stick it out, to find coping mechanisms, to give 2 weeks notice. Like there's always a choice. So I think that's always important for all of us to keep in mind. And to get back some of that autonomy when you're feeling misaligned, it can really feel like a loss of autonomy. And then going through the practice of what's working, what's not, is it something I can live with? Gives you back that autonomy. It gives you back to that place of, okay, I have some decisions I can make. And what is the best decision for me?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because it's like you're not stuck. It may feel like it, but it's just being honest with yourself and then take
Right.
inventory of, what's truly like why you're struggling. And if you're struggling, then just look at other opportunities for now, not necessarily quit your job today, but to just be open to the possibilities of what you can do moving forward that would be more in alignment with you. So. I
Right.
love that.
Yeah. So if you're having stomach aches every day, it probably is misalignment.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, Maya, this conversation has been so powerful. I can't thank you enough for the generous information, insights, and vulnerability that you've shared with me. I want to thank you so much for that. So before we kind of like end this amazing conversation, even though I don't want to, where can our listener connect with you if they want to just, get to know
Sure.
you better?
Yeah, I would love that. So, we're California Women Lead, and as I mentioned, I'm the executive director. Online, our website is cawomenlead.org. So it's calwomenlead.org. And I mentioned we are a membership organization, and as a membership organization, we do trainings around professional development. We offer virtual connection and networking times. We offer trainings on how to get appointed to boards and commissions. And so we're a great place for women who want to stretch themselves and be with other supportive women. We're a place of networking. We're a place of professional development. We're a place where we're trying to give women the tools to be able to ensure that we have equity in elected office. You don't have to necessarily want to run for office. We're here for everyone, whether it's nonprofit, corporate, government. With that, we do have our membership. And what I'd love to do is to offer your listeners a discount. So if anyone would be interested in joining California Women Lead, they can go to cawomenlead.org, use the code, why don't we use the code success?
Okay.
So just one word success. And
Okay.
I'll have a promo code set up for the year where people can sign up and become a member, and we'll do $25 off.
Oh,
So if
okay.
they're interested. And
Yeah.
then I'm reachable through our website as well, and would love to hear from your listeners. I'm greatly honored that you thought of me and gave the window for a conversation. It's just been a delight to speak with you. And I'm loving that you're doing the podcast and can't wait to hear your other guests and the conversations. I really love that you're focusing on alignment. And for me, that has been when I started to focus on alignment. That's when the traditional sense of success really started for me. And that's when I feel my most confident. And when I'm confident, others see that. And so the alignment is pivotal to finding your internal success and even that external success as well.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And which is why I definitely had to have you on your show because, after talking to you and you sharing your amazing journey with us, it's like it it's proof that you were definitely leading yourself in alignment and you were just so self-aware of what you wanted to do. And you definitely shared a lot of amazing insights and tips on how someone, whoever's listening to this or watching, can do that for themselves. So
Yes.
thank you for that, Maya.
Oh, well, thank you. I can't wait to hear your other guest. And I hope if any listeners had questions, that feel free to reach out to me. As you can tell, I'm a pretty open book and I'm down for supporting other women and making those connections to make it happen.
Okay, we'll definitely do. All right. Well, I encourage everyone to go ahead and check out Myel. I will definitely just list out her exact website so that way you can get a hold of her, and then as well as the generous discount that you've offered. Thank you so much for that. So, if this conversation resonated with anyone, please definitely just check us out. And I want you to know that alignment is definitely key. And as you can tell and heard from Miles' story, it's definitely been a huge part of her amazing success. So, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you so much again, Mile. I really appreciate
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
it. Take care. Bye, everyone.